When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing something a little different. Now, I had said in my community post, like the top 10 greatest A Song of Ice and Fire quotes, and I've actually decided to change it for this video. So I am just going to take some of my favorite quotes, and we're just going to talk about them in this video. And then I want to ask you guys, do you guys want me to do this every week? We could do a video like this every week where it's like quotes that are submitted by you guys and you can just leave them in the comments, or I could just find random quotes. We just talk about them every single week. And yeah, they can be quotes about anything. Some of these don't have a lot of deep meanings. They're just really badass quotes and are some of my favorites. Now, before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow and reach out people that might like this content as well. And let's get into the video. So the first quote I want to talk about is a pretty famous quote. It is one by Tyrion, and it is, "Lord Tywin Lannister did not in the end shit gold." Now, a really great quote because it really talks about a lot of different things where Tywin's always had this very big reputation of being very rich and powerful, and in the end he kind of died like any other guy, really. And in a way, this scene, Tywin kind of goes out like a bitch. He dies on the toilet. Really opposite way you think someone like Tywin would go. And I just think this is a really interesting quote to kind of end out Tywin's life with Tyrion. The next quote comes directly from our main man, Littlefinger. And this quote comes right after the Purple Wedding and comes after basically Sansa kind of is escaping King's Landing. And it's "A bag of dragons buys a man's silence for a while, but a well-placed quarrel buys it forever." Really great quote, and it really kind of summarizes Littlefinger as a character, right? He understands how people will betray you once this gold runs out or whatever, or how money can only do so much for you, right? It's something that Tyrion also kind of shows us through the books as well, but it's something that Sansa still doesn't understand, right? She still doesn't understand this whole idea that people will lie to get things that they want. In this case, it was, dragons, a bag of dragons for this guy. And Littlefinger is kind of starting to explain to her and give her lessons on how to play the game better. So I just think this is a really good introduction into Littlefinger and Sansa's relationship in the next book. And then also kind of showing how Littlefinger thinks and how he kind of plays the game as well. Number 3 this is a quote from Euron, and I just think this is a really good quote that kind of shows who Euron is as a person, how very confident he is, and how he really will do whatever he can to get what he wants. So in this quote, it is, "The choice is yours, brother. Live a thrall or die a king. Do you dare to fly? Unless you take the leap, you'll never know." And that is kind of really a great quote, not even for just the books, but kind of your own life, right? Euron's not a good dude, but think about what he's saying in this quote. It's, if you don't take any risks and if you don't kind of do what you want to do, right, you're never going to know if you could have done those things, right? You don't want to come back at your deathbed and have all these regrets in your life that you never asked out that girl you wanted to, or you never tried to do the business career that you wanted to go into because you were scared to take that leap. So I kind of like this quote for Euron, and it kind of helps show who he is as a character. This one, very classic quote. I actually have a Song of Ice and Fire blanket that actually has this kind of a little bit of it's paraphrased, but this quote on it, and it is, "There's only one God, and his name is death, and there's only one thing we say to death, not today." And Syrio Forel says this quote to Arya. It's a very iconic quote, and I would probably say it's the most iconic quote from showrunners, like the show fans as well as the book fans. Pretty popular one, but just a simple one. I don't really have a lot of complex things to say about this one. I think really you just look at it from the perspective of, we're not dying today. All right, you god of death, you can go shove it. So yeah, I like this quote. It's a famous one, so I had to put it on the list. Now, this quote is from Catelyn. Now, Catelyn to me she's not a character I like, but this is a quote that I really thought was good for Catelyn. If you had to fall into a woman's arms, my son, why couldn't they have been Marjorie Tyrell's? And it shows how bad a decision Robb made and who he ends up kind of marrying with Jane Westerling. She doesn't really bring much to the table, as in alliance-wise, like, you know, she doesn't really have much of an army and all that stuff, and there really is not a lot of political advantages to marrying Jane Westerling. So Catelyn saying, you know, why couldn't have just been Marjorie Tyrell? This would have solved so many issues and stuff like that. If you were going to betray Walder Frey, it needed to be something that made sense, where you gained a lot of men out of it or a lot of political power, and Robb just doesn't. And it kind of shows, you know, Catelyn, in some regards, sometimes she's very smart, and other times not so much. This is one of the times she is smart. Now, the next quote, it's kind of said by a lot of different characters. I'm just going to say Stannis. We'll just put Stannis in here. But words, period. Words are wind. Now, this to me is a lot of what the political maneuvering are in A Song of Ice and Fire. Words don't mean a whole bunch. Actions mean a lot more. And what do you have over someone to make their words make sense or to be actually truthful? If you look at words like Walder Frey, right? You know, he says, oh yeah, you know, you're safe in my, you know, castle or whatever. Words are wind. And all this stuff with like Littlefinger with Ned, all that stuff. It's a really good indication of what kind of goes on in the political game in A Song of Ice and Fire, and I just really like this simplicity of the quote that really kind of sums up a lot of what was going on even in the first book of Game of Thrones. The next quote, again, not a lot of deep meaning to it, but it's a quote that I really like, and I think it really establishes Jon and Egret's relationship, and it makes it just so much more heartbreaking when they end up, you know, having to split because Ygritte dies. And Jon, you know, he's a man of the Night's Watch. He never was going to be a wildling. But the quote is, "You're mine, mine as I'm yours. And if we die, we die. All men must die, Jon Snow. But first, we'll live." It's a great quote, and it kind of summarizes Ygritte as a person. She was someone that's very free. She didn't really let anyone control her. And she really did love Jon Snow, and Jon loved her as well. So it's a really good quote for both of them, or not both of them, for Ygritte. And again, it just builds to the tragedy that is Ygritte's death. Now, this quote is two different people, but I'm just going to say Ned because he's the one that has the really important line in this. But the quote is, can a man still be afraid? The quote is, can a man still be brave if he's afraid? And then Ned's response to this is, that is the only time a man can be brave. It's a really good and inspirational quote just in general, because when people ask to be more brave, right? Let's say you pray to God in real life and you're like, I wish I was more brave. Well, the situations you're going to be put in to become more brave, you have to be, you know, afraid to do something and build your bravery to do that. So this is a great quote by Ned, and it really signifies Ned as a man. Another very, very iconic quote from Tyrion. We're going to be talking about one from the first book, one from the first few chapters, and a Jon chapter. But the quote is, never forget what you are. For surely the world will not. Make it your strength. Then it can never be your weakness. Armor yourself in it, and it will never be used to hurt you. It's a really good idea, but here's the thing for Tyrion, right? Is that Tyrion takes this a little too far, right? He kind of plays the like demon monkey type role and guy that no one likes a little too often, and I think that's kind of what ends up leading to his, you know, trial where all these people flip on him. Like, yes, Cersei had a big hand in on that and stuff, but Tyrion does not help himself when he is making himself this person that should be hated and stuff like that. And Tyrion does get treated unjustly, but it's a big quote that goes across how Tyrion approaches being a dwarf in A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, with Jon, I think this quote actually has a different meaning, right? So Jon, it's, don't be frustrated when people call you a bastard. It's what you are, right? But don't let people hurt you saying that. Now, it's two different things because people don't look at Jon and think he is kind of this person that's not a good guy, right? They just see him as a bastard. He's not highborn like that and all that. And Tyrion is vastly different. So the quote is working for two different people in two different ways, which I really love about this quote. So we have another quote from Tyrion in the first book. It is, "Most men would rather deny a hard truth than face it." I think that is a really good statement, because if we look at the others, right, in A Song of Ice and Fire, it's something that it should be a truth, right, but it should be difficult for people to swallow because it means we have this life-ending threat, and a lot of people don't want to believe it or face it, right? I mean, you're getting all these letters from the North, from the Wall, and all these people are kind of laughing at it and stuff like that, and it's something that I really like when it comes to that part of it, but also, this is just true in general. Most people will not face the truths with them, whether that be... So for me personally, I would take this quote where at one point of my life, you know, I was denying that I needed to lose weight and stuff like that, and I had to face that. And now, you know, I've been working out and stuff like that, and I do that stuff, and I've been doing it for like a year or whatever. But that is something that people will definitely just do what he's saying right now. They will deny what the truth is because it's harder than facing it. And I just love that quote for a lot of reasons. Now, the next one comes from Aemon Targaryen. Again, another big quote. And it is, "Love is the bane of honor, the death of duty. What is honor compared to a woman's love? What is duty against the feel of a newborn son in your arms, or the memory of a brother's smile? Wind and words. We are only human, and the gods have fashioned us for love. That is our great glory and our great tragedy." Now, I love this quote because it can be applied to so many elements of the story. If we look at Robb, for instance, with Jane Westerling, this is exactly true. Now, Robb didn't exactly love her, right? But Robb definitely had an attraction for Jane Westerling that might have turned into love, and that was the death of his duty to keep his vow. And we see that all sorts of times. We see with Jaime where he has this love for Cersei, and it'll kind of force him to do things that are kind of unethical and maybe not right. And that's kind of the death of duty. So I really love this quote. And it also, you know, with Jon, how he's talking to in this quote, it's a really great quote and speaks to a lot of different things going on in the story, especially when the quote is said. So I really like this one as well. And let's get on to the next one. Now, this next quote comes from Tywin, and I've talked about this quote before in a video where I was talking about the morality of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I think this one sums it up pretty well. "Explain to me why it was more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner. The price was cheap by any measure." Now, this is a really interesting quote because Tywin's kind of saying that instead of having to kill all these people in warfare, right, we killed them at dinner. Yes, it might have been, you know, less honorable in the public's eye, but we didn't have to kill all these thousands of men, right? Where, you know, they might get to go see their families and stuff like that. So really, was it, you know, less noble to do this, right? And that is a really good morality debate you can have, right? You see the kind of flip side of the Starks and the Tully mindset, and you go to Tywin's mindset, and it is a very valid argument, but again, it's really not right either. But yeah. The next two quotes are going to be by Stannis. These are two of my favorites from Stannis. I've talked about one of them in detail, but I'm going to talk about number 14, and we'll do number 15. "I never asked for this, no more than I asked to be king. Yet dare I disregard her? We do not choose our destinies, but we must. We must do our duty, no, great or small, we must do our duty." This quote is kind of when they're talking about kind of sacrificing Edric Storm, and he's talking to Davos. And it's something that kind of shows who Stannis is as a character. Stannis is always someone that he is very dutiful, right? He is very, you know, if I am supposed to do this, this is what I'm going to do. Stannis believes that he should be king, and he has to be king for the honor of House Baratheon. He is the next in line because of the bastards of Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella. And it shows a lot how Stannis is thinking, right? So I just love this quote because it helps really to understand who Stannis is as a character. Number 15 is, "Only Renly could vex me with a piece of fruit. He brought his doom on himself with his treason, but I did love him, Davos. I know that now. I swear I will go to my grave thinking of my brother's peach. And this is a very tragic quote from Stannis, because we do find that Stannis did love his brother, or at least at one point he did love him. And Renly was wrong in the situation, and what he did betray Stannis, in my opinion. And the piece of fruit, we always talk about Renly's peach. I did a chapter analysis on this chapter, and it shows and signifies everything that was different between Renly and Stannis, where Stannis really doesn't have much enjoyment in his life, and Renly, that's all he really had was an enjoyment, never really having to get dirty and, do all that stuff. So I think this is a really great chapter, and it's a great callback to Renly's peach in that chapter. We have another quote from Aemon Targaryen to finish out the video, and it is, "Kill the boy, Jon Snow. Winter is almost upon us. Kill the boy and let the man be born." This is just a fantastic quote for Jon, because Jon at this point was still kind of a boy almost. He wasn't really making these tough choices that he needs to be making as Lord Commander and stuff like that. And Aemon just gives him really great advice here. And when you're put into this role of leadership, Jon, as someone in leadership, you can't be always worrying about people's feelings, what is morally good. Sometimes you have to do what is right and what makes sense. So that is a quote I really love from Aemon. So that is the video. If you guys would like me to do another video like this next week, submit your quotes or your comments, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.